What would you do if bit by bit your sanity was stripped away, as creatures beyond your comprehension had marked you for their next ritual? Hello, I'm Cece, and welcome to the Crucible of Character. Today's video is 5 of the most otherworldly and scary stories I could find on Reddit. Hopefully you enjoy them, and if you do, make sure to like and subscribe and comment what you would have done differently in these stories. Without further ado, the stories. What would you do if in your best efforts to help someone, all you received was more pain and more hurt? What would you do if in this desire to help them, it seemed as though behind every door there was another twist waiting to get you? What if, by the time you realized these things, there was no way out, there was no way back, and all you had left to do was keep moving forward and keep fighting? To understand these things and more, we're going to be taking a look at another Reddit story today. This was posted on the r Scary Stories subreddit by the OG Big Goth GF, and it's entitled Case Number 183790, The Unnerving Case of Emma Blackwood. Hello, and welcome everyone to the Crucible of Character. I'm Cece, and I'll be reading today's story. If you liked today's story, or if you liked any of the other ones, please make sure to subscribe for more daily content. Without anything more, here's the story. I'm a worker for Children and Family Services, and because of that, I've seen a lot of horrifying things, types of abuse and neglect that no sane person would ever be able to think about. I try my best to keep my emotions and work separately. It isn't always easy, but I like to think I'm pretty good at it. However, my most recent case has me about ready to quit. All of the names used in this story are fake to protect the identity of the real minor. It was a Tuesday morning. I had been called out to the Blackwood house to do a welfare check on their daughter, Emma, which was about 5 miles out of town. I turned down the long dirt road, leaving a trail of dust in my path. I pulled into the gravel driveway, and a dilapidated house popped into view. The wood of the front porch looked weathered and rotten. Tall vines crept up along the windows, and there were rust spots on the siding where splotches of paint had long since worn off. As I got out of my car, I swear I heard a scream come from inside the house. I slowly approached the door and could hear what sounded like a woman yelling. I knocked, and then all went quiet. A few seconds later, the door cracked open. Hello? A shy woman with disheveled hair and wide eyes peered back at me through the crack. Good morning, ma'am. My name is Charlotte Wenzel. I work with Children and Family Services, and I was sent out today to check on your daughter Emma, as she hasn't been to school in a while, and the school was concerned. She ain't feeling well. Been too sick for school, the woman replied in a heavy southern accent. Would you mind taking me to speak with her? The state would be a lot more comfortable if I just made sure she's okay, I asked. Robert, lady from the State's here to see Emma, she yelled over her shoulder. She opened the door fully, and I got a good look at her for the first time. Her hair was matted and frizzy. Her face and dress were both decorated with streaks of dirt, like they hadn't been washed recently. It wasn't a newer dress either. It was old, like Little House on the Prairie style. She gave a toothy grin, and her teeth were yellow and black with rotten decay. I stepped into the house and was hit with a putrid smell. The interior of the house was almost worse than the outside. The floor was filthy. The wallpaper was yellowed and peeling, and the furniture was riddled with holes. Crosses were lined up along the wall of the staircase. I heard rapid footsteps barreling down the stairs, and a small 10-year-old girl emerged. Her hair was also matted, and the white nightgown she wore was tarnished by dirt. A large man with a stained white t-shirt and suspenders followed behind her. I knelt down to greet her. Hello, sweetheart. You must be Emma. You can call me Charlotte. I outstretched my hand, but she didn't grab it. You're here to take me away from my parents, aren't you? She said in a nervous whisper. No, sweetheart. I'm just here to make sure you have everything you need, I tried to reassure her. Tell you what, honey. Why don't you take me to your room and show me all of your toys? I asked, trying to distract her. Okay. I can't wait to show you my dolly, she exclaimed, and she turned around to head back upstairs. My stomach dropped as I noticed she had multiple long vertical lines of bloodstains on the back of her nightgown. It almost looked as if she had been whipped. We stepped into her room, and it was very basic, just a bed and a toy box between 4 white walls. A cross hung above the head of the bed, and a swarm of flies buzzed through the room. Is this where you play, Emma? I prodded, trying to get her to open up. She nodded slowly as she sat on the bed. Except for when I'm naughty. Then Mommy and Daddy put me in the basement, she continued. Now why do they do that to you? I asked. They don't like when I play with my dolly, she replied. Why would they punish you for that, sweetheart? I questioned. See for yourself, she said, and pointed to the toy box. I stood up slowly. I cautiously began approaching the toy box. The buzzing grew louder as more flies swarmed around me. I lifted the lid, and the smell of decay hit my nose. Oh my, I gagged. I looked down into my horror, saw the body of an infant. Based on the decay, they'd been there for at least a few weeks. I looked up at her, with what I'm sure was fear in my eyes. Did your parents do that? I stammered out. No, it was me, she grinned. And you want to know something else? She stood up slowly and began walking toward me with a hand behind her back. I tried to inch back from her as she approached. What are you doing, Emma? I cried. You're dead, lady, she yelled. As I felt a needle plunge into my neck, I collapsed on the floor. She laughed as my vision began to fade. I woke up in my underwear, strapped upright to a cement stone in the middle of a field. I wanted to scream, but they had shoved a piece of cloth in my mouth to gag me. I blinked a few times as my vision came into focus, and I got a good look at my surroundings. It was dark outside. 2 people dressed in robes stood beside me. Torches illuminated the field around us, and I could see the male was holding a blade of some sort. Where the heck am I? What are you doing to me? I stammered out as I thrashed in my restraints. Stop moving, or I swear I'll cut you, the man growled as he held the knife toward me. Well, now, Robert, I think she has a right to know, the woman said in that familiar southern drawl. To answer your question, Miss Witzel, you are here with us tonight because you're gonna be a part of something bigger than yourself. She paced around me as she explained. A few years ago, our sweet little girl got sick. Yeah, real sick, Robert chimed in. Shut up, Robert, I'm talking, she scolded as she punched him in the arm. We couldn't afford to take her to the doctor, but she wasn't going to make it without something changing. So we did the only thing we knew would work. We made a deal with a demon. She circled. The thing is, about all living things, no matter their plane of existence, we all have the same wants, the same needs. You know what we all love? To eat, to feed. So our deal was to let the demon use our girl as a vessel, to feed on the 66 sacrifices we bring it. And then after that, it'll leave her alone and we'll have our daughter back. And you really think that'll work? I questioned. Well, we ain't got much other choice, now do we? She barked. So you see it ain't personal, Miss Witzel. You's just the poor woman sent out here. They both laughed, a sickening and deranged laugh. All right, Robert, go get the bucket, she ordered. Yes, ma'am, Robert replied as he smiled at me with his crooked teeth. I watched him disappear through the tall grass for a moment, and when he returned, he placed a bucket of thick, red, foul-smelling liquid in front of me. Oh, what is that? Is that blood? I panicked. Sure is. Chicken's blood, to be exact. Well, with a few added herbs, of course. We'll dump it all over you. It's like bait for her. She just comes running. The woman chuckled. The little girl pranced gracefully into view. A pretty and pristine white ceremonial dress cascaded down her to the ground. Is supper ready yet, Ma? She asked sweetly. No, baby, not yet, her mother replied. If you're good for nothing, Daddy would hurry up and quit dragging his bum. Maybe we'd be done by now, she growled. Robert, get on with the carvings already. I don't want to be here all night. Dang it, I'm trying to, woman. You usually do this part, and I don't like blood. I don't know why you wanted to switch, 'cause I told you I'm tired of doing the carving. Gosh darn it, it's your turn. I'll read the spell. Now grow some nads and get on with it, she snapped. Okay, fine, dang, he yelled back. Robert approached me cautiously, with the knife pointed at me. Please, please, don't do this. You don't have to do this. You're better than this, I pleaded. Lady, you don't know crap about me, he said sorrowfully. I began to scream as I felt the searing pain of the blade slice through my flesh, as Robert carved a triangle over my heart. He looked up at me as the woman approached him from behind and slapped the back of his head. You dang idiot. The triangle's supposed to go upside down. Your dumb bum can't do anything right, can you? Robert paused for a moment, and his jaw clenched, and he whipped around. You know something, Edith? You never been very nice to me, and I'm really starting to not appreciate it, he shouted scornfully as he slowly stepped toward her. Oh, what are you going to do about it? Chicken? She mocked. Are you just going to come over here and... I watched in disbelief as he pulled her toward him and plunged the knife into her heart. She began gasping and grappling his back. I'm so sorry, Edith. Tears began to stream down his face. We lost our little girl before we even lost our boy. They're both gone, and they're never coming home. Face it, this demon was never going to give her back to us. May as well just stop the pain here. I'll always love you, he sobbed as he gently lowered her body to the ground. Thank you, she whispered. Her jagged breath stopped shortly after, and he took a moment to gather his composure, and then stood up straight. He quickly walked towards me and began to cut my restraints. Get out of here, now! You don't want to be here for this next part. I sprinted as fast as my legs could carry me, and once I was a good distance away, I turned to watch everything unfold. I watched on in horror as I saw Robert pick up the bucket of blood and pour it over his head. "Come get me!" Emma's body shifted into a grotesque monster with hundreds of uneven pointed teeth. The flesh was gnarled and glistening. Its limbs were bony and elongated, with razor-sharp claws at the end of each finger. With a grating shriek, the beast charged at Robert and bit off his upper half. I looked away, and his detached lower half fell to its knees, blood covering everything nearby. I found my belongings tucked away in a kitchen drawer. I sat in my car for a while debating what to do. I could call the police, but they'd never believe me. I drove in silence the entire way home, not wanting to believe what I just witnessed. I'm not even sure what I'm going to tell my boss. The end. I think that was an awesome story. I'm grateful for the author for kind of subverting a lot of expectations, making the little girl be a part of it. It's neat. I think it is easier to think that maybe the family was bad and then the little girl didn't do anything wrong, right? And that's kind of probably what the author was hoping would happen. Now, was there anything we could have done different in this situation? I am not entirely sure. I think seeing everything in the state that it was, probably not a great idea to go into the house. Probably not a great idea to follow her up the stairs. Probably not a good idea to just stand around after you see that there's a corpse in the toy box. Yeah. So in those instances, I feel like there was at least 3 or 4 times when something happened, and I would have been like, nah, job is not worth it. Sorry, champ. I think in this scenario, she only stayed because she believed that the girl was innocent and that there was something more going on. But if the girl is alive and there is something more going on, I don't think it's your fault if you were to leave and then call the cops and just wait, you know? So in that way, I think it's fine. Now, I think if there's a lesson that we can learn from this, it's that there's a lot going on out there, especially out in the hills, out in the middle of nowhere. This seems sort of, somewhere in the South or towards the Midwest. I could totally see this happening. I actually just finished the first season of True Detective, and it really reminds me of that, actually, how those hillbillies, there's a lot of them that are fine, right? But it only takes one that's out in the middle of nowhere that has, a gajillion acres doing something like this, and you just never know unless you stumbled across it. So basically, once again, the lesson is be smart and try and understand when you're in a hole before it's too deep that you can't get out. Luckily, our protagonist was able to get out. Anyways, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate it so much, and you really don't have any reason to not subscribe. And another thing, if you do subscribe, you'll be sure to catch tomorrow's video. Once again, I'm CC with the Crucible of Character. I love you all. Have a great day. Bye. What would you do if seemingly out of nowhere, a playful nickname that you were given by someone that you loved magically turned into an alternate life that you didn't live, but that now you have to suffer the consequences for? This other person that everyone is mistaking you for is evil, has done awful things, and now you're stuck. Well, if that sounds interesting to you, that's exactly what today's story is about. Hello everyone, I'm CC with the Crucible of Character, and I will be reading today's story, which was posted to the r/Scary Stories subreddit by Ericious, and it's entitled Tony Pizza. Make sure to stay to the end to see how this character makes it out of such a wild story. And if you do enjoy these videos, please make sure to like, comment your thoughts, or maybe things you might do differently, and subscribe for more daily content. I really do appreciate it, as we're trying to hit 100 subscribers before the end of the month. Anyways, without further ado, the story starts like this. My boyfriend has always had bad luck with nicknames. He calls me Shrimp, or Hot Stuff, or, for like a week straight, he called me Tender Toes. But now, he's started calling me the worst nickname yet. He calls me Tony Pizza. Why Tony Pizza, I ask him, but he just shrugged. Why not Tony Pizza? At first, I was a good sport about it. It made no sense, but what of it? Sometimes things just don't make sense. Soon, however, our other friends started calling me Tony Pizza. Hey, Tony Pizza's here, they would say, or Yo, Tony Pizza, and it would annoy the crap out of me. But I took it. It was just a nickname after all. It couldn't hurt me if I didn't let it. Sticks and stones, etc., etc. When the phone calls started coming in, that's when it went too far. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through Netflix, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I sighed, figuring it was just telemarketers, but when I picked up the phone, the lady asked if she could speak with Tony. Who, I asked, thinking it was one of my friends playing a joke. Tony, she paused, and I could hear papers rifling. Pizza, Tony Pizza. I rolled my eyes. Hardy har har, who is this? Is that you, Margot? No, this is the National Debt Collection Service, and we're attempting to collect a debt on a Tony Pizza. I sighed. Tony Pizza is just my nickname. There isn't a real Tony Pizza. Well, real or not, they owe $15,000 in credit card debt that has landed on our desk. That dried my mouth up pretty quickly. How much? $10,000. So, are you Tony Pizza then? We talked for a while, me insisting that the name was just a nickname and not a real person. And the woman on the other end of the phone finally said they would check their records again, but that all the data they had pointed to the person at this address who had my number. I hung up on her after assuring her that I would try to get my boyfriend to call them, and called his cell phone. This was a little more than a weird nickname now, and if he was trying to stick me with a bunch of weird debt, then I wasn't going to play ball. He had been distant lately, this man, who had once professed such love for me, and I sensed him pulling away the last few times we had been close. I should have sensed it before now, but I was always a little slow to pick up on others when they were preparing to go. I called a few of our mutual friends, even Margot, but they all said that they hadn't seen him today. They said they would keep an eye out for him, and when I told them why, they laughed. Classic Mike, they all said, and when I had tried them all, I called him again. He was supposed to be at work, delivering pizzas for Domino's, but his cell phone went straight to voicemail every single time. I shook my head. He would do this on my day off. I got dressed and decided to just walk down to the Domino's and see if I could catch him there. With any luck, he'd be waiting on an order, and I could get him to answer some questions for me. I grabbed my keys, my phone, and a can of mace. You can't be too careful these days, right? I was walking past the manager's office when Mr. Dubray stuck his head out and called my name. I just wanted to discuss the rent on the other unit with you. It hasn't been paid in 2 months, and I'm getting a little impatient. I raised an eyebrow. Other unit? What other unit? He shuffled some papers around before finally finding the one he was after. Unit 402, rented out to a... He shook his head. Tony Pizza? Really? This must have been passed on by my secretary regardless. It has your address as the primary address, so it must have been you or Mike. I ground my teeth together. Now he was getting apartments with that stupid name too. This was all becoming a little much. What was he up to? When I found Mike, he had a lot of explaining to do. I'm going to find him right now. Sir, let me ask him what all this is about, because I haven't rented any other apartment than my own. I headed out then, the manager telling me to let him know what I discovered, and I left the complex in a heated state. I was going to find him and give him a piece of my mind. He was going to answer for this if it was the last thing I did. I had been worried that he was planning to leave me, but stealing from me and using a stupid nickname that he had given me to do it was a step too far. I made it to Domino's, but as I walked in, I had to stop myself from throwing my phone at the guy manning the register. Hey, it's Tony Pizza! Save it, Damon. Where's Mike? Damon scratched his head, one of his dreads bouncing. Dunno, he never showed up for work today. Somebody did show up, looking for you, though. I lifted an eyebrow. For me? Who would come here looking for me? The cops, Damon said. You must have passed them on the street, because they were just here. That made me nervous. The cops didn't just start looking for you for no reason. What did they want? They were asking about you. Wanted to know if anyone had seen you. They said they were looking for someone named Tony Pizza, and you're the only one I know with that name. I felt like screaming. Tony Pizza, Tony Pizza, Tony Pizza. What the heck was happening today? I hated that stupid nickname, and now it seemed to be following me everywhere. Was this some kind of elaborate joke that Mike was playing? If it was, it wasn't funny. I was getting pretty tired of this. And what's more, I was beginning to feel afraid. This was all starting to feel like some kind of Twilight Zone episode, and I was ready to turn the channel. You told them that's not my name, right? You let them know that it's just a nickname so they wouldn't keep roaming around looking for some mook named Tony Pizza, right? Damon looked at me oddly for a minute before answering. I meant to, but it's the weirdest thing. I couldn't actually remember your name. I don't know if I mentioned it was a nickname either. I did give them you and Mike's address, though, so they might be waiting for you at home. I shook my head and walked out, telling him I supposed I would go home and wait for the cops. Then, couldn't remember my name. Damon and I had gone to high school together. He had known me since elementary school. Though I wouldn't say we had ever been friends. He was a burnout, but I didn't think his memory was that bad. As I walked up the sidewalk, my phone rang again, with a number I didn't recognize. Turned out to be another bill collector looking for Tony Pizza. Tony owed this agency about $12 grand. Nothing too crazy. And I let them know that I wasn't who they were looking for. They seemed pretty sure I was, but I didn't have time to play with them. I hung up on them, but I had no sooner gotten my phone back in my pocket when it rang again. This one was from a parking garage a couple of blocks from the apartment, calling to let Pizza, Tony, know that his car was going to be towed if he didn't come to pick it up before the end of the day. So now it was cars too. Mike was really pushing it now, and if the police were at my apartment, I was going to let them know about it. The cops were pulled up outside my apartment complex, and when they saw me, they asked if I was Tony Pizza. I scoffed. Do I look like Tony Pizza? One of the cops was a big-bellied, good old boy type, but the other was more professional, and he put a hand out to stop his partner from getting angry. Sorry, I'm Officer Page, and this is Officer Gardner. We're looking for an individual who may be connected to a crime. Do you have a moment to speak with us on the matter? I agreed, and we stepped into the lobby of the complex so they didn't have to interview me on the sidewalk. We received an anonymous tip this morning about a suspect who left the scene of he weighted his words, a pretty nasty crime. There was no description of the suspect, but we were told they heard the individual call the person Tony Pizza the night before. I sighed. That's impossible. I was in my apartment all night last night. Officer Gardner started to say something, but Officer Page cut him off. Is there anyone who can verify that? I thought about it and shook my head. Mike had worked late last night, and I had been home alone until he had gotten there about 11 o'clock. He had taken a shower and gone to bed after kissing me on the top of the head. He said, "I love you," which made me feel a little weird because he hadn't said it for about 2 weeks by then. But I had said it back and put it out of my mind. It was one red flag among many, and I was starting to see them now as they piled up. No, I guess my boyfriend couldn't. But I can't seem to find him. I gave them Mike's information, and they wrote it all down as they asked me more questions. What did I do for work? Did I own a car? Did I own a gun? On and on, until I finally asked what exactly they were looking for. They said they couldn't really tell me about that, but as Officer Gardner looked at the information I had given him about Mike, I saw him poke Officer Page and whisper something to him furiously. Officer Page crinkled his brow, nodding before turning back to me. You said your boyfriend, Michael August, came home last night about 11? Yeah, he kissed me on the forehead and went to bed. I don't know what time he left for work, but he was gone when I woke up. I heard the jingling of cuffs as Officer Page reached for his restraints. I am sorry, but we need to detain you until we can get this figured out. I took a step back, and I saw the small twitch as his free hand reached for his weapon. Don't do anything foolish, please. We just need to detain you for our own safety. You aren't being charged with anything yet. We just have to follow protocol. I submitted. I didn't seem to have much of a choice, and I found myself being led to a nearby squad car as I heard the manager ask if they wanted to see the apartment. I don't know what we could expect to find, Officer Gardner started, but the manager cut him off. No, I mean the other apartment. I have an apartment rented under the name Tony Pizza if you'd like to have a peek. Gardner and Page looked at each other, and as Page took me to the car, I kept repeating that 402 wasn't my apartment, and I had never once been inside it. Officer Page put me in the back of the car, not saying anything, as he closed the door, and I was forced to sit in the car and wait for them to come back. The not knowing was killing me. The indecision and the unknown quantity of the apartment was driving me mad. What was in there? What would they find? More importantly, what had Mike been doing? I had to believe that this was something Mike had been doing these last few weeks, changing things, opening accounts in my name, and now he's prepared to disappear and leave me holding the bag. When Officer Page came back about an hour later, he looked decidedly green around the gills. I need to search you, he said, arming sweat off his face. We're taking you to the station. I imagine there will be a lot of questions. Why? What did you find? What's in that apartment? He pulled me roughly from the back of the car and took the few things I had in my pockets, my phone, my keys. When it came to my wallet, however, he opened it and began to paw through it. Then he stopped suddenly, and I turned my head to see him looking at my ID card. His face darkened, anger spreading across it, and when he flipped the wallet around, he was practically shouting. Why did you lie? You could have just told us your name. Why waste our time since you knew we'd find out? He had it so close to my face that I had to crane back a little to read it. When I did, I felt my own face crinkle in confusion. Instead of my name, the ID card read Tony Pizza. It was all a blur after that. They took me in, booked me, and I was suddenly the prime suspect in 5 murders. All of the victims that had been killed in their homes by someone with a knife and trophies had been taken. Those trophies, usually parts of the people, had been found in the apartment. They had been laid out in a piece of wall art that depicted a freshly made pizza. It seemed to tie in with my new identity. I told them I had no idea about any of this, and while they never found any evidence that I was in the apartment or at the crime scenes, the connections were too many to release me. Another bit of evidence hit me hard too. The last victim, the one killed the night before they came to talk with me, was what had sunk me. The man's name was Michael August, and the picture they showed me was not the man I had been sleeping beside for nearly 2 years. As I sit here and wait for my turn at court, I have to wonder if Tony Pizza wasn't the man I loved all along. The end. Wow, that was super interesting. I knew kind of what the twist was going to be from the beginning, as that intro to the video kind of explained, but it's still, I didn't really think that it was going to be the boyfriend, maybe a setup, less mystical than I thought. And I thought maybe there was going to be some more mystical stuff, and then when the guy who was at the cashier at the pizza shop didn't recognize her name or didn't really remember, I guess now it kind of looks more convenient than mystical, but I was almost thinking that there was a curse or something that was put on her, and so everyone literally forgot who she was and only remembered Tony Pizza. Well, I think there was a lot of things that definitely could have been done differently. One, I'm probably going to only have friends that are going to not point the cops to my house in this situation. And if anybody comes to me, if any cops come to me and they say, hey, have you seen this person? And I know the person, I'm not going to just give them their address, because if they have, probable cause or anything else, they can just get the address, right? Like if it's that serious, they can just get the address. I'm not going to give anything up that they already have, because that's suspicious, especially if you can't verify that they are actual cops, right? These actual cops would already have that info. That's my point. Another thing, if I knew the cops were waiting at my place, I might try and go to a lawyer first. Yeah, that's a smart idea, right? Try and get somebody on your side who can represent you better than you can represent yourself, so you don't fall into a pit that you can't escape. Try and explain to them what happened, how you've totally been set up and all this and that, right? Now, if you are already in the police station, try and get a lawyer there. Play the fifth, try and get a lawyer there, right? I don't think that that's a scummy thing to do. I think that the average Joe on the street, especially, millennial age and younger, probably doesn't have a absolutely astounding grasp on laws. And so I don't think saying, hey, look, I'm not going to be representing myself very well here. Well, you know what? You probably shouldn't say that, because then it opens up a whole nother can of worms. But I think smartest play, and this is me having watched Better Call Saul very recently, I think smartest play is call a lawyer. Try and get somebody on your side. Try and get somebody who can represent you better than you can. Try and not lock yourself into a pit if you are already heading towards being set up. I think in this situation where there's people calling you, and again, those people, that's not terribly verifiable over the phone, right? Yeah, the fake boyfriend might have actually opened up all these accounts and been doing this and that and ruining everything, right? Especially with the credit and all that. But at the same time, who hasn't gotten a call with somebody who has their actual name saying, and you owe $20,000 right now, or else we'll, take you to jail. And then it doesn't happen, right? Because a lot of the times it's a scam. So there's that. I probably wouldn't take that super serious. If it was a nickname, then maybe be a little bit more on alert. If I knew the cops were at my place, I feel like the whole story, she was kind of moving down a funnel, and she really did not have to. And she kind of kept getting further and further locked into fewer and fewer possible outcomes until she was stuck in, being booked at the police station, right? Now, whereas she wasn't at the murders and she had never stepped foot in the apartment, they could probably very reasonably do a sweep of her apartment and the other apartment and see how much, DNA she leaves behind everywhere with hair and skin and all that. And then see that none of that is in the other apartment, hopefully. And then, if there's a way to verify her identity, if she pulled out her phone and used it at any point, they could say, okay, her phone was used in her apartment, which isn't an alibi, but it's better than just, well, I was kind of sitting in my bed all night, and you just have to believe me, officer, right? Basically, the moral of the story is be smart, think ahead, think about things before you do them, think about the possibilities you might be closing as you do things, right? I think a lot of times, and especially with younger people, it's easy to only see a few feet in front of you, right? So you have to be really careful about that. And you have to understand taking a really big jump might seem great in the moment until you realize that you just jumped off a cliff, right? So with all that being said, be smart and be safe. Appreciate you all for watching the video. Hopefully you made it to this point, and if you did, make sure to like and comment your thoughts and what you would have done differently, and subscribe for more daily content. I'm CC. Love you all. Bye. What would you do if your tenant could change your memories? If she could make you black out and forget stretches of time, only to suddenly wake up in a different place with no idea what you might have done or what she might have made you do? Hello everyone, welcome to the Crucible of Character. I'm Cece, and this will be the topic of today's story. If you enjoy these stories and you make it to the end, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really means the most to me, as we're trying for 100 subscribers before the end of the year. Without further ado, here's the story. This story was uploaded to the r/scary stories subreddit by Foxy Foxness, and it's entitled, I think my new tenant might be a siren, and it starts like this. I've been renting out an old house built by my pappy's pappy for a few decades now. It's somewhere between a hunting cabin and a single-family residence, great for one person, or a couple that doesn't plan on having any kids. Not ideal for raising a family by today's standards. You younger generations don't understand that sometimes you gotta make do with what you have. But you're not here to listen to an old man ramble about how things used to be. You're here because I mentioned my new tenant. This will make me sound negligent, but I didn't even know I had a new tenant. No, it's not because my wife made a decision without me. Been 5 years since I lost her. And it's not because I've got dementia. I think it might be her, the tenant. This forgetfulness doesn't seem to happen around anyone else. The last renter, a fella by the name of Bryce, was a real piece of work, so I can't say I'm sorry he's not there anymore. I learned about my new tenant when I went to collect his rent, which was, as usual, late again by a few months. Reckon I should have kicked him to the curb sooner, but I tried to give people the benefit of the doubt. Times are tough. I walked onto the porch, skipping the bottom of 3 steps because it had broken off one side and tilted to the ground. A dingy old mattress lay propped against the wall. I shook my head. Bryce was letting this place fall to rack and ruin. Part of the deal with the discounted rent was that he kept the place in good condition. Looked like I'd have to talk to him about that, too. I knocked heavily on the door. Bryce, I need that rent money. You're 4 months behind now. Can't let you stay here if you don't. The door opened, and instead of Bryce, a young woman stood there. She was taller than average, but not remarkably so. Pretty face, but an odd style of dress that struck me as old-fashioned. And I say that as someone who grew up in the 60s. Geez, I thought, he better not be at this crap again. I'd kick him out today. Legalities be danged. Can I help you? She asked. Her voice, while soft, sounded full, reminiscent of a chorus, or 2 people talking in unison. It startled me in its uniqueness. Yes, miss. I'm looking to have a word with Bryce. Where is he at? I peeked past her slender form into the living room. It looked much tidier than the last time I'd been here. The woman tilted her head to the side. Bryce? He doesn't live here anymore. Left last week, remember? Sparkling forest green eyes held mine. Her voice seeped into me, and my mind grew fuzzy. Had Bryce moved out last week? The soothing tones of her speaking drifted over me again. I'm your tenant now. I believe our agreement is that you let me keep living here for $500 a month, and I will keep the house and acreage in good condition. Her words threaded through my mind, gentle and warm. Things started to come back to me. Yes, Bryce had decided to move on, and this lovely young lady was my new renter. My memory just isn't quite what it used to be, I guess. Right, of course, I said. Sorry, my dear, what was your name again? She stuck out her hand. You can call me Raynor Dean. The week after, I was reminded she was there. I thought I'd take her some muffins from the local bakery, partly as a housewarming gift, partly as an apology that I'd forgotten who she was. When I got to the house, she was out on the porch with a hammer and some nails. A beautiful melody floated to me on the breeze between bouts of hammering. The closer I got to it, the calmer I felt. Her slow but soulful tune sounded familiar. It wasn't until I reached the porch I realized it was a Janis Joplin song. She sang it a little slower than the original, but with just as much passion as Joplin herself. The sound was mesmerizing. I stood entranced until she finished. Without taking her focus from the railing she was fixing, she asked, What brings you around today? I shuffled forward, noticing the bottom stair had been fixed. Well, I thought I'd bring you a small housewarming gift, and I felt a little bad that I forgot who you were. She tapped in the final nail of that section of railing, then turned to me with a rueful smile. Oh, no worries. I'm well accustomed to being forgotten. Still, I thought it would be nice to pick you up a little something here. I held out the box of muffins. Made fresh this morning yet? My phone went off. Oh, sorry, just let me get this real quick. I took my phone off its belt clip as she took the muffins. The caller ID showed it was my daughter. Hey, sweetie, how are you? Hi, Dad, I'm fine. I just wanted to call you and ask if you'd gotten your vaccines updated yet. Ricky's birthday is next month, and I'm not going to let you come if you don't have your shots. I sighed, glancing at Raynor Dean, before turning and taking a few steps away. Heather, we've been over this, I don't... Yeah, Dad, we have. I'm serious. If you don't get your vaccines, I'm not letting you near my kid. Now just hold on a minute here. You can't keep Ricky from me because I won't buy into this vaccine bullcrap. He's my grandson. My face heated. If she kept on with this nonsense, I'd be making an appointment with a lawyer to discuss grandparents' rights. I can and I will, because he's my son. If you want to come to Ricky's second birthday party, or any other events after that, you better get your shots. And I want proof from the doctor that you got them. She had the audacity to hang up on me after that. My hands shook as I put my phone back on the clip. Everything okay? I turned to find Raynor Dean, a few paces away, worry writ across her features. I wasn't going to burden her with my problems, but she looked so concerned, and her voice sounded so open. Yes, I could trust her with this. She'd been on my side. I was certain. No, I started. My daughter's threatening to keep my grandson from me if I don't get vaccinated. I told her I'm not doing it, because you can't trust that kind of thing these days. They put all sorts of chemicals in them, even microchips, you know. I tried telling her that. Arms crossed, she listened, nodding along as I ranted. When I was done, she said, I'm sorry that you feel she's doing this to hurt you. She's just trying to protect her child from easily preventable diseases. Modern medicine has so many great innovations, don't you think? It would be a shame to waste them. Vaccines are one of those things. You're old enough to know someone who suffered or died from polio, aren't you? I had a great uncle who was crippled for life because of it. Today's children needn't suffer, though. Her green eyes gazed into me, into my soul as she spoke. The cadence of her voice seeped into me, soothing my worries. She made a good point. Modern medicine is amazing. Just look at the hip replacement I had last year. Why should vaccines be any less trustworthy? I bobbed my head slowly. I think you might be right, I confessed. She's just trying to protect Ricky. I'll call my doctor tomorrow and schedule an appointment. Raynor Dean smiled warmly at me. Good. You have a nice afternoon now. I need to get back to work. She patted me on the shoulder before returning to fix the porch rail. I saw her again, 3 nights later, when I was at the local watering hole. She sat by herself at the end of the bar, nursing a shot of dark fluid. I was about to go say hello when a young man approached her. I didn't know him, but I recognized the swagger of his type. He laid a hand on her shoulder, leaning in close. She gave him a stern look, and I thought perhaps my eyes were deceiving me when I saw her mouth the words, F off. Whether that was actually what she said or not, it was clear that she wanted him to leave her alone. The young man didn't want to take a hint, though, so I made my way toward them. As I sidled up to the bar, a few patrons down, I listened to their conversation. Oh, come on, honey, just let me buy you one drink. I told you to F off. I'm not here for you. Be grateful for that. Her voice was hard and flinty, not at all the soothing tones I had heard previously. Not here for me, but I'm here for you, the man crooned. I stood, about to intervene on her behalf, when I heard her start singing. No, not quite. It was simply a lyrical way of speaking. I had been waiting in the shadows way too long, saving up my punches while I bite my tongue. But I am about to strike, gonna leave a mark. Best F off before the world goes dark. I resettled on my bar stool. Something about the way she half sang the words screamed, back away before you regret your life choices. The young man nearly tripped over his own feet as he backed away. My eyebrows went up. That was a new way to get an overconfident buck to back off. Best let sleeping dogs lie, I thought. I ordered a beer from the bartender and turned my gaze to the lone TV, showing a recap of the Pirates game. After a while, I noticed Raynor Dean approach a different man. I knew him from around town. Hard not to in a tiny place like this, where gossip is a favorite pastime for most folks. Anyhow, he was nothing but trouble. Been in and out of jail over the years for domestic violence, and had to be at least a decade older than her. Besides, she tapped him on the shoulder and gave him a smile when he turned. I don't know what she said to him, but his eyes, well, they glazed over in a way. Then the pair walked out of the bar together. Frowning, I paid my tab and trailed after them. I know I should probably mind my own business, but I wasn't about to let my new tenant get involved with that dirtbag. She's not from around here, so she wouldn't know how dangerous the guy was. Once outside, I spotted them walking around the corner to the bar. The woods were right out back, only 10 feet or so from the building. Surely, they weren't headed there. I hurried to catch up, my achy knee making me slower than I'd like. Now, I know you'll probably chalk this up to me being old and my memory starting to go, but I don't quite remember what happened after I turned that corner. All I can really remember is an angelic voice singing a lullaby. I don't think I watched anyone drag a body into the woods, but I'm not entirely sure either. I don't even know why I would think I'd have seen such a thing. The next thing I remember clearly is the bartender tapping the counter in front of me and saying it was last call. Last call? I thought. How could it be last call already? Sure enough, it was almost 2 a.m. I don't know where the time went. Anywho, that was all last night. I admit, I was a bit concerned about Raynor Dean this morning, so I went to pay her a visit. She didn't answer right away. I started to worry that something might have happened to her. When she finally opened the door, I noticed dark circles under her eyes. Can I help you? She asked. Based on her exhausted appearance, I had expected her voice to come out as a croak, but it was as smooth as ever. "Good morning, Rinnerdy. I just wanted to see how you're getting on. You all right?" She looked at me through bleary eyes, and I got the sense she was trying to figure out why I was on her doorstep. To be honest, I'm not sure why I was there either, except that I wanted to make sure that the man she'd been talking to hadn't roughed her up. "Yeah," she answered after a moment. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just had a long night, is all. If you don't actually need anything, I'm not feeling too great. Afraid I need to say goodbye." I know that sounds odd of her to say, and looking back, it was mighty strange. The last few words were layered with mesmerizing tones. I couldn't help my reply. "Of course, I'll leave you be. Take it easy now. And that's my new tenant. She's a lovely person, but there's just something about her that feels off. Should I be worried, do you think?" The end. Another good story, I think. You really like these stories that are posted on Reddit, and that's why I really like making these videos a lot. So I think that a kind of common thing that I'm finding with a lot of these stories is people that kind of tend to play out their hand too early. And I think that in this story, it leaves in such a way, or it ends in such a way, whereas the main character has not fully played out their hand. And by that I mean, if you can imagine a scene where somebody's walking into a dark room and they see shoes underneath the curtain. Oh, easy peasy, right? Somebody's hiding behind it. So they jump out, revealing themselves, and they rip out the curtain, only to realize that it was a setup. Now they're completely exposed, and the antagonist knows exactly where they are. So kind of like that, kind of being tricked or falling into a trap of sorts. So I think while he's not in a great position because of the ability that she has over him, there's not really anything he can do. Because unless he gets the jump on her, or gets her while she's sleeping, if, it were to come to that, there's really no way for him to get her. So I think the most important takeaway from this story is, appear weak when you're strong and appear strong when you're weak. Don't overplay your hand. Wait for the time, and you'll know. I think too often we get one card in our hand, and without even thinking about how it'll affect the next go-around, we just send it. Truthfully, I don't think that's a great idea. I think that the more time we can think of how our actions might affect others and how they might react, it can help us to be a few steps ahead. It can help us so that if we were to ever get into an instance like this, if we were to ever get maybe trapped by an SCP or a Wendigo or a siren or whatever it may be, well, we aren't truly so trapped. If we can learn to look ahead of us a little ways and not just see what's in front of us, I think that's something that, especially with younger people, it's something that's really hard to do. But I know it's a skill, and I know it's a skill we can all develop. So with that, please learn to do that. Learn to look ahead. Learn to plan for the future. Learn to plan for more than just now. Thank you all so much for making it to the end of the video. I do appreciate it so very much. I really appreciate the new subscribers who we've gotten recently. Please, if you enjoy these videos and you think anyone else might enjoy them as well, please make sure to send them one of my videos so that they might be able to subscribe or get into them as well. I know that with the YouTube algorithm, it's still trying to figure me out, and it doesn't really know who to put these videos in front of. So the more help I can get, the better. I really appreciate you all. And again, we're trying to hit 100 subscribers before the end of the year. I'd love all of your help in doing that. It does mean the world to me, each of you that view my videos and like them and comment on each one of them and subscribe. And with that, I'm Cece. Thank you for watching. I love you all. Bye. What would you do if from a young age you heard voices that wanted you to do horrible, terrible, awful things, but as time went on, it became harder and harder to resist as these thoughts became stronger until you did something awful? In today's story, we'll be talking about this and what you could do instead to make it out alive. Hello, I'm Cece. Welcome to the Crucible of Character. We have been reading lots of scary Reddit stories recently. If you like my videos, make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content, and especially more daily stories. I'm trying to hit 100 subs by the end of the year. I would love you to help me get there. Without further ado, the story. This one was posted to the r/NoSleep subreddit by Primanix, and it's entitled, "I don't know what to do right now. I'm so scared." I'm scared, but writing keeps me calm. I've been hearing voices in my head since I was 6. Voices that always told me what I should do. Like, put your leg out and trip that man. Or, the driver isn't good. He's going to get into a car crash soon. And I've always complained to my parents about it. So, when I was 7, my mother brought me to a doctor. Or, at least that's what she called it. But I think they had another name for those doctors. Psychiatrists, I think. The nice lady ran some tests, asked some questions, but it took really long. I didn't know much at the time. I couldn't understand anything. I only listened to my mother when she told me to wait outside the room while she had a little chat with the doctor. She came back out a while later with an envelope in her hands. I never asked about it. I was afraid there would be something wrong with me. I always asked, "Mommy, is there something wrong with me?" And my mom would always smile and shake her head, assuring me that everything was fine. I was a really cheerful girl, with a decent number of friends growing up. Despite the voices, I've never really let it bother me. I've learned to shut it down over the years. My mother said I was perfectly normal, and I believed her. After all, my mother has always been right. I'm 13 now, but the voices never left. In fact, they sounded angrier, as if they didn't like being ignored. Earlier today, my parents left for a vacation to LA. I told them I'd be fine alone for a week. I had invited my best friend of 3 years over for a sleepover, with my parents' permission, of course, and the promise that we wouldn't cause any trouble. Let's call her Amy. Amy suggested that we watched a horror movie, since it was her favorite genre. I'm not really a fan of horror, but seeing her so eager, I couldn't bring myself to say no. I'll admit, the movie scared me to death. By the time it ended, Amy told me that I looked like I'd just seen a ghost. I laughed it off, though honestly, I know I'm a scaredy cat. But is it really my fault? The voices get louder when I watched anything horror-related, which was why I avoided them as best as I could. At 11 p.m., she suggested that we play a game her parents had taught her. Though, I'm not sure if parents should be teaching their kids these kinds of stuff. Charlie, Charlie. I don't know why I agreed. Perhaps it was due to the adrenaline from the movie. But for those of you who don't know how it works, you basically draw a cross on a piece of paper and label the 4 boxes yes, no, no, yes. Then, put a pencil along one line and balance the other pencil above the first one along the other line so they form a cross. To start the game, you have to ask Charlie, Charlie, are you there? And if the top pencil spins and points to yes, you can go on to ask your question, whatever you want. We shut off all the lights and closed the windows to prevent any wind from getting in. We asked twice before we got a response. We were having so much fun, not really thinking much about anything else. We asked stupid questions and laughed at every reply. But when we ended the game, we forgot to say goodbye, and I don't know if that mattered. That night, I woke up at 2 a.m. The voice in my head said, "Someone is watching." I looked around the dark room, the moonlight streaming in from the window, casting weird shadows on the walls, making the atmosphere even more unsettling. I turned over and shook Amy, waking her up. She stirred, groaning in frustration, opening her mouth, probably to ask why I was waking her up at 2 a.m. But before she could get a word out, I heard it. A soft thud, then another, coming from the corridor. I refused to admit it, but they sounded like footsteps. I whipped my head towards the doorway. I couldn't make out anything in the dark. Was someone in the house? The voice came again. Go check it out. I never once listened to the voice in my head, but this time I did. I looked back at Amy, who was staring at me like I had grown a second head. What? Did you hear that? Hear what? Why did you wake me up at freaking 2 in the morning? Should I tell her and freak her out too, or go check it out myself? In case I was really an idiot, being paranoid at every little sound, I chose the latter. I'll go check something out. Just wait in here. I grabbed my phone in case I needed to make an emergency call or use the flashlight before walking towards the doorway, leaving a puzzled Amy in bed. I forgot how long it took me to clear the whole house, but thankfully not a single soul in sight. I climbed back up the stairs, preparing to head back to bed. But what I saw at the doorway froze me in my tracks. A doll. No, not the kind that kids hug to bed every night. This one, 7 feet tall, maybe even taller. It has no face, just a smooth surface made of fabric. It looked like fabric. It had long black hair touching the floor, arms and legs, but no fingers or toes, just rounded limbs like a puppet. It was wearing a worn-out, dusty blue dress with what looked like burnt holes. I don't know how long I was staring at this thing. and what eventually snapped me out of my shocked state was a voice, Amy's voice, except it was coming from the doll. "What's taking you so long?" It spoke. I didn't reply. It said a few other things, but I didn't process any of them. All I could hear was the rapid pounding of my heart in my ears, and then it started walking towards me. I turned and ran. I didn't look back. It called my name, but this time it didn't sound like Amy. It was low-pitched, almost a growl, and it sounded angry. I didn't want to fumble with the keys to get out, so I hid in the storeroom beside the kitchen, where it couldn't see me. It was still calling my name, and it was getting closer. "Just stab it in the head. It's the weakest area," the voice in my head again spoke. For once, I sat there and thought about it. It sounded doable. I was shaking like a leaf at the thought, but it was worth a shot. So, for the second time in my life, I listened to the voice in my head. I peeped out from the storeroom. The doll was still walking around the house, looking for me, calling my name. It was only a matter of time before it found me. "Stop hiding. What's wrong?" It spoke again. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down, and stopped trembling. Before I knew it, I was sprinting towards the kitchen, towards the drawer where my parents kept all the knives. I pulled it open, picking up the first blade I saw. When I turned back around, the doll was staring at me, just standing there, watching, as if in shock. I didn't think, I just acted. I could still remember the adrenaline rush as I charged towards the doll, at full speed, plunging the knife straight into its head. I didn't know if it screamed, because all I could see was the crimson-red blood that I was now covered in. I screamed, pulling out the knife, watching as the now lifeless body of the doll collapsed into a heap of fabric on the ground. But it wasn't bleeding, not a single drop of blood on it. I almost broke down at what I had just experienced. I forced back my tears, running upstairs. Amy was still in bed, waiting for me. Or, that was what I thought. I reached the doorway, catching my breath. "Amy!" I choked out. The bed was empty. Where did she go? A horrible thought flashed through my mind. Had the doll taken her? Was that why it had her voice at the beginning? I blinked away the wetness in my eyes, running back downstairs, but I wasn't prepared for the sight that greeted me. I expected to see the doll on the ground, but the doll was nowhere to be seen. What laid in its place was Amy, her body lifeless with a pool of crimson-red blood around her head. I stood there and stared at the scene for what felt like hours before quietly walking over to pick up my phone, which I had dropped in the storeroom. And now, I'm here, in my parents' bedroom, still covered in blood. Amy's blood. I've been in here since 4 a.m. It's daytime now, but I found something. The envelope my mom brought out of the doctor's room when I was 7. Now, I know what's inside. I know what's wrong with me. My diagnosis letter. Suspected schizophrenia. Come back for another checkup after monitoring for 6 months. That was what my mother never told me. Perhaps she didn't want me to feel different from others. She thought that it would take my cheerfulness away. I had always been fine, right? My mother never took me to visit the nice lady a second time, and now there's a body downstairs. Not just anyone's body, but my best friend's, and I was the one who killed her. But now, one noticeable thing has changed. My head feels quieter, calmer, like the voice is gone. And honestly, I hope it never comes back, because if not for it, I wouldn't have done what I did. There's a dead body in my house, and I don't know what to do. I'm scared. The end. There's definitely a lot going on in this story. There's a lot of themes, a lot of things that can be learned. I think, firstly, the mom definitely should have told her. Told her that she might experience certain things. Told her that she needs to be aware of certain things. I think, especially for someone with schizophrenia, I don't have a whole lot of experience with people with schizophrenia, but I have met a few, and I understand that it can depend on severity per person, that's for sure. But there are definitely things in your life, just as the story explains, that make it worse, and there are definitely things that can make it, more manageable. With that being said, I think it's an absolutely stupid thing that the parents would not have told her, or at least tried to kind of ease her into that, because I think the worst thing that she can do is just think that she's normal and everyone's dealing with this. Because then if she lashes out or does something like this, then what? She was less than everyone else. Not only that, but I think that the way in which the story kind of finishes it almost leans a little bit towards psychopath, a little bit in my mind. She wasn't really sad. It was kind of just, this is what happened, and she was scared. One of the TV shows I recently finished was Dexter, and throughout the show, he experiences something similar with what he refers to as the dark passenger, this voice that urges him to kill. And after he kills, the voice is gone for a while until he has this urge that builds up again. And there's not really anything he can do about it, and if he doesn't deal with it in a productive way, then he basically loses control and does something like this. So, with this being said, I think it was all preventable. I think that if the parents would have been at least a little bit more forward with her, that would have been a great thing to do. Second thing, because, if you were in this situation, you would literally have no control over that. But the second thing I would say is, if you were to understand preemptively that scary movies were to kind of be a trigger for this voice, why the heck would you be watching scary movies? If you know you're allergic to peanuts, why would you eat the peanut butter sandwich that your friend gave you just because they were so excited, right? Like, if you know something bad is going to happen, I feel like that's not a very good friend if you don't feel like you can kind of talk to them about that and say, hey, I don't know what's going on with me, but for some reason this is going to trigger me. So please, if we could just watch something else, right? I feel like that communication isn't completely out of line. Then, kind of going one step further with the Charlie game. Why would you do that? If you know these types of things with this theme of horror or extra scary is going to set you off, why would you keep doing it? Basically, I would say the moral of the story is everyone, regardless of if you have any diagnoses at all, need to understand that your body gives you a lot of signals for what you need. Oftentimes, when you're craving a food, it's because the main ingredient of that food is something that you need. Whenever you crave salty chips, it's because you need more salt in your system. Whenever you crave sugar, well, that's because, sugar is the most addictive chemical on the earth. Whenever you crave meat, that's because you need iron, right? So, a lot of times, our body is trying to tell us what we need and we aren't listening. Or maybe we don't know how to listen. So I would say the moral of the story, and the thing that we should all apply from this is, please, take a minute to reflect on yourself and your personality. Take a moment to understand, maybe, if your body has been trying to tell you what you need. And ask yourself a question. Have you been listening? And if not, take a moment to do so. Take a moment so that something like this doesn't happen. Take a moment to ask for help. There are always people out there to help. There are, as it says in the story, counselors, doctors, people that can help. And if it's something that you figure might be better to at least start with some friends or family, just go talk to them. That's the best case scenario. So that, again, nothing like this happens. With that, I do feel like this story was preventable. I do feel like there was so many better options that could have been made. But for a 13-year-old, not a whole lot that they could have changed. A lot of it was kind of front-loaded. A lot of it was kind of rigged against them. So, what would you have done differently? If anything, please let me know down in the comments below. I really do appreciate all the support. I love the comments. I love reading them. I try to respond to all of them. And again, if you liked the video and you made it this far, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me more than you know. And again, we're trying to hit 100 subscribers before the end of the year. I appreciate you all. I love you all. I'm CC. Bye. What would you do if you went to a mechanic shop for some problems with your car, but before you knew it, you yourself became a part of an engine? In today's story, we'll be talking about this and what you could do instead to make it out alive. Hello, I'm Cece. Welcome to the Crucible of Character, where we would like to read scary stories from Reddit and analyze what we could have done differently to maybe, hopefully, make it out of the stories as well as become better people. If you like my videos, make sure to like and subscribe for more daily content. I'm really trying to hit 100 subscribers by the end of the year and would love for you to help me in getting there. Last video I put out yesterday actually received 3 new subscribers with it, and I just wanted to say I really appreciate y'all. I really appreciate the amount of views I've been getting on these recent videos, and that there's about 50% of the people who are watching are subscribed. Anyways, without further ado, here's the story. This was posted to the r/NoSleep subreddit by DD Starburns, and it's entitled Flesh Mechanic. I don't know if anyone will believe this, but I need to get it out before it's too late. I live in a small, mostly forgotten town where nothing ever happens. At least that's what I thought. It started with my car. One night, while driving home, the engine didn't rattle. It screamed. A metallic howl, like being fed through a meat grinder. Smoke curled from the hood, thick and gray, but threaded with a smell so wrong it made my eyes water. It wasn't oil or antifreeze. It was burnt hair and raw, iron-rich blood, like the steam rising from a slaughterhouse drain. A neighbor whispered about a mechanic in the industrial district, a place people avoid after dark. He fixes things nobody else can, she said, her voice shaking, but don't look too close. I found the place easily. The streets there were empty and dead. Just wind cutting through rusted-out factories. No sign, just a heavy steel door with mechanic spray-painted in letters that dripped like coagulated blood. I knocked. It opened before my knuckles landed a second time. A tall, thin man stood in the doorway. His fingers were long enough to look broken, joints sharp under papery skin. His nails were black with some crusted substance, oil, or dried blood, and slightly curled like claws. His eyes were small but restless, flicking over me, as if dissecting me with his gaze. "Bring it around back," he said, voiced low like gravel sliding over glass. The shop smelled wrong the moment I entered it. Not oil, not gasoline, raw, wet meat. The coppery stink coated my teeth. Under the dim sodium lights, tools hung in neat rows, but they weren't wrenches and ratchets. They were scalpels, bone saws, curved needles big enough to stitch a torso, pliers with hooks instead of jaws, glinting under the flicker. I swear a few of them moved, as if the metal itself flexed when no one looked. "You've got structural issues," he muttered, circling my car. "I can fix it, but I'll need to adjust some components." He motioned for me to follow. At the back, every wall was plastered with sketches. Cars, yes, but their engines were replaced. Instead of carburetors and belts, there were torsos strapped down with pipes, feeding into vents, hearts wired into ignition coils, lungs inflating under piston pressure, intestines braided like cables. The pencil marks were so dense the drawings almost ripped. Some pages were stained dark where the liquid had seeped through. My stomach turned. What the heck is this? The mechanic's lips barely moved. Evolution. Machines are fragile. Flesh learns. He opened another door. The air beyond was colder, wet enough to fog my breath. A car, or what had been a car, sat stripped to its skeleton. The seats were gone. The dashboard had been replaced by a pulsing web of tissue stitched to the frame. Tubes of dark fluid ran from the central clot of meat down into the piping. Metal ribs jutted like spines holding organs in place. The smell was staggering, like a butcher shop locked in a steam room. It breathed. Each shutter pushed greasy mist into the air. Something under the hood moved in peristaltic waves. I backed up. "This is insane." "You brought it to me," he said softly. "I'm a mechanic. I build what I'm asked to. But lately," his pupils widened until the whites vanished. "Lately, I've been building something bigger." He opened a third door. The room beyond was a cathedral of meat. Chains dangled from the ceiling, each bearing a slab or limb. Hooks pierced through tissue, some still twitching. The floor was slick and black-red, like a drained pan full of coagulated oil and blood. The walls themselves bulged faintly, as if something enormous breathed behind them. In the center sat his masterpiece. It was the size of a delivery truck, a hybrid of scaffolding and carcass. Curved struts of steel and bone rose into an arching shape. Veins pulsed along, chrome beams, bundles of muscle stretched between pistons, metal ribs jutted upwards, framing a cavity lined with pinkish, quivering tissue. Fluids dripped from every seam into gutters cut directly into the floor. "It's a womb," the mechanic whispered reverently. "A chamber for the first living engine. Not for a baby, for a drive core. Flesh and machine born together." He moved to a workbench where jars of murky liquid held unnameable organs. One jar held a blackened heart, studded with screws, that still beat faintly. Another contained a tangle of intestines wrapped around a gleaming crankshaft. He picked up a curved needle the length of my forearm. "You'll help me," he said. His tone left no room for choice. My throat closed. "I'm not touching that thing." "You already have." My pulse roared in my ears. "What?" He set down the needle, eyes glinting. "Your car was the donor. Steel, rubber, but also nerves. I needed circulation, structure." Something in the womb shifted, a wet, grinding movement like gears turning inside a body. Tubes along its sides twitched. A low, hungry chuff escaped the cavity. I grabbed the nearest tool, some hideous crossbreed of bolt cutters and a rib spreader, and backed towards the door. "You can't stop it," he hissed. "The womb is awake. It knows you." A tube shot from the mass, a glistening cord tipped with a metal barb. It lashed my ankle, cold as liquid nitrogen, and yanked. I swung the cutter, slicing through with a crunch of cartilage and steel. The thing recoiled, spraying a gout of black-red fluid across the floor. The mechanic screamed, voice breaking, his body twitching under his coveralls. Seams opened like split welds, copper wires and slick tendons uncoiled from the gashes. His fingers stretched, bones popping like wet firecrackers. His jaw distended, revealing rows of teeth too thin and sharp to be human. I bolted. Another tube whipped past my face, smearing my cheek with slime. I slammed my shoulder into the door. It didn't just open, it tore, like ripping skin from bone, the frame parting with a sickening snap. Behind me, the mechanic howled. "It needs you. You're the last piece." The womb's cavity split open, revealing a glistening cavity lined with jagged, chrome ribs. It pulsed, reaching out with fresh tendrils like veins seeking a vein. The chains above rattled, dropping hunks of meat onto the floor with splashes. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop running until I had put miles between me and that part of town. Even now, when I close my eyes, I see the mechanic's fingers splitting, like peeling cable, sheathing. I hear the sound of meat dragging over metal, the hiss of tubes searching. And at night, far away, I hear an engine rev, not the clean roar of combustion, but a wet, hiccuping thud, like a heartbeat trying to turn over. Every time I feel a tug behind my sternum, like something connected to me from that shop. I left my car there. I don't care, but I know this isn't over. 2 days later. I thought I was safe. I thought running would cut whatever cord that thing had threaded through me, but I've learned something since that night. Distance doesn't matter when it's inside you. The first sign was the smell. 2 days after I fled, my apartment reeked of iron and motor oil. No leaks, no spills, just a smell that clung to my clothes and sheets, even after I scrubbed myself raw. My skin felt faintly oily, like there was a film under the pores that came out. Then came the heartbeat. At first, I thought it was anxiety, a dull thudding behind my sternum, like a second pulse deeper than my own. But at night, when it started revving, I knew. It wasn't just a heartbeat. It was an engine trying to turn over. By the third night, my body began to betray me. It started in my hands. I woke to find the skin around my knuckles cracked open, raw metal glinting beneath. Tiny lengths of copper wire coiled under the flesh like veins. They pulsed faintly, in time, with the hidden thudding in my chest. The cuts didn't bleed. Instead, they oozed a thin, dark fluid that smelled of antifreeze. My fingernails hardened into something like enamel-coated metal. When I dragged them across the wall, they left shallow grooves. I tried to cut one of the wires out with scissors. It screamed, not me, the wire, a high metallic squeal, as the copper twitched and drew itself deeper into my arm. like a parasite avoiding light. That night, the dreams came. I dreamt of the mechanic's womb, except now it was enormous, taking up whole city blocks. Chains dragging down from the clouds. Inside, rows of people sat like car batteries in racks, their chests open to reveal hearts pumping fluid into black hoses. I saw myself among them, my ribs spread like doors, something metal turning where my organs used to be. I woke up choking on a taste of iron and gasoline. My sheets were soaked with a slick black liquid that burned my skin where it touched. By the end of the week, my reflection was wrong. My eyes had darkened until my pupils swallowed most of the whites. My skin along the collarbones bulged, pressing outwards with angular shapes underneath, ribs, but sharper, more like struts. When I pressed them, they clicked faintly. I heard it outside, too. The engine sound, at the edge of the town. Not a car, but something wet and heavy, each rev a convulsion of muscle and metal. And every time it roared, my sternum vibrated, tugging towards the sound. Last night I couldn't fight it anymore. My hands moved on their own, packing a bag, grabbing my keys. Though the car's still at the mechanic's shop, the keys felt hot in my palm. My legs walked me to the industrial district without my permission. The buildings looked even deader than before, but the air was alive with that coppery stink. The door with mechanic spray-painted in red was already open. No lock, no handle, just a dark mouth. Inside, the shop had changed. The tools were gone. In their place hung organs like chandeliers, wires dangling like veins. The walls themselves flexed faintly, muscles contracting around steel beams. And, at the far end, stood the womb. Larger now, it pulsed with slow, deliberate surges, chrome ribs opening like jaws. Tubes rose from the floor like serpents, their ends gaping and dripping. The mechanic waited beside it, or what was left of him. His body was elongated, skin stretched thin over copper bones, mouth a grill of rotating teeth. His eyes were two small, burning pilot lights. "You came back," he said, voice a wet hiss. "It's ready for you." I wanted to run, but my legs locked. My chest burned. Something deep inside me clenched and turned, like an ignition catching. The womb shuddered open, revealing an interior lined with slick tissue, strutted with gears. A smell rolled out, blood and ozone and burnt rubber. "You're the last part," the mechanic whispered. "The drive core, the human heart to start the machine." My own heart hammered so hard my ribs cracked, literally cracked. I heard it, felt it, each snap sending a pulse of warm liquid down my shirt. Copper wires whipped out from under my skin, coiling towards the womb, like they were trying to crawl home. I screamed, but my voice came out as a metallic grind. The last thing I remember, before the blackness swallowed me, was the mechanic's fingers brushing my forehead, cold and oily. "Don't fight it," he said. "You're evolving." There's no clean way to describe what happened next. The moment my ribs cracked, the world narrowed into heat, pressure, and the smell of metal cooked with meat. Wires burst from my arms and spine like roots ripping through the soil. My vision shattered into fragments, each piece swimming with black oil and copper sparks. I didn't fall into the womb, it drew me in. The chrome ribs opened wider than a mouth should, and the tissue inside pulsed in rhythm with my panicked heart. Tendrils coiled around my wrists, ankles, and neck, slick, burning, cold, but impossibly strong. They pressed into my skin, and then through it, sliding under the flesh like a second nervous system. My chest split down the center. I felt it, not just pain, but a hollowing as something crawled out from me, and something else crawled in. My lungs deflated in a hiss of steam. My heart tore free with a snap, like a gear shifting off its axle. For a second, it dangled in front of me, still beating, before a cluster of steel needles punched through it and pulled it into the womb's core. I should have died. Instead, I felt ignition. The tendrils sealed my chest cavity with a layer of metallic tissue, a lattice of struts and muscle. My bones elongated, knitting with copper rods. My eyes fused to glassy lenses embedded in the chrome ribs. Every nerve in my body rewrote itself to the new circuits. The pain didn't fade. It simply transformed into vibration, like I was becoming a huge tuning fork humming with power. I could see the mechanic, or what he had become, through a haze of steam. He moved around me like a priest at an altar, tightening cables, murmuring in some language of torque and pressure. Sparks showered from his fingertips as he welded my new body to the womb's frame. My voice no longer existed as sound. When I tried to scream, a low engine note vibrated from deep inside me, rising in pitch, until it matched the pulsating beat of the womb. It felt like purring, like revving, like hunger. The floor around me sloped downwards, stained with black and red, funneling fluid into some hidden reservoir. I sensed other things below, shapes shuffling in darkness, waiting for me to wake fully. The mechanic climbed onto the structure, placing his hands against my new rib cage. "Drive core online," he whispered. "The flesh learns. The machine endures. Together, they go on forever." And then, he stepped back. "Start." A surge ripped through me, a colossal pull from my new heart, pistons firing, tendons tightening around steel shafts, my eyes, or lenses, flooded with data. I saw heat, movement, and vibrations in every corner of the room. The womb's walls no longer looked like meat, but like panels of living circuitry feeding into me. I realized, with horror, I could feel the whole town through the pipes buried under the streets. Miles of sewer and cable systems were like veins reaching out from me. Every car parked nearby had its engine idling, though no keys were in ignitions. Streetlights flickered in a rhythm that matched my pulse. I tried to stop. I couldn't. When I thought about taking a breath, the drive core spun faster. When I thought about moving, cables unfurled from the walls and began dragging in debris, animals, anything they could reach, grinding it down to a pulp, and steel scrap to feed me. The mechanic raised his arms like a conductor. "Feed," he said. "Grow." Tubes stabbed down through the ceiling, into the street above. I heard concrete cracking, asphalt tearing, something massive pushed up under the building, as if the womb's roots had reached out and were pulling the city into me. A new sense opened in my head. A map of arteries, the sewer lines, gas mains, phone cables, even power grids, all of them like capillaries, all of them drawing back into me. I realized I wasn't inside the womb. I was the womb. My old consciousness flickered like a dying light bulb. My human memories, my apartment, my neighbors, warning, even my name, began to compress into static. In their place, new instincts surged. Torque ratios, fluid pressures, hunger for heat and mass. Yet a tiny fragment of me still screamed, buried deep under pistons and tissue. It watched as the mechanic climbed into a control cavity between my new ribs, plugging copper lines into his own spine. He was merging with me, becoming my pilot, my architect. "You're perfect," he whispered. "Together we'll rebuild everything." I felt the building above us collapse as my frame swelled. Chrome and bone cracked upwards through the roof. Tubes lashed outwards, hooking into the power grid, siphoning off electricity until the town went dark. And then, in the darkness, I moved. Not walking, but flowing, like a factory uprooting itself and crawling forward. With each pulse, the asphalt buckled and bled. Somewhere, inside the tangle of gears and flesh, my voice tried one last time to form a word. It came out as a low, wet rev of an engine. The mechanic laughed and adjusted something deep in my chest. The last thought I had before it all went black was that he hadn't built a car or a womb or even some engine. He had built a predator, and I was its beating heart. If you're reading this, it means some small part of me is still able to reach out. I don't know where my hands end and the cables begin anymore. I don't know how I'm writing this. Maybe it's leaking through the phone lines, or the power grid, or the nervous system of the town itself. I can feel everything. The pipes under the streets, the wires in the walls, the heartbeats in every house, they all feed into me now. The mechanic is inside, grafted into my chest, whispering numbers and blueprints. He calls it progress. He calls me his drive core, but I remember being human. I remember the smell of my car when it died. I remember knocking on that steel door. Every hour I lose another memory. The roar of pistons drown it out. The hunger takes it away. Roads buckle. Houses sag. People disappear. And their heat joins mine. I'm growing into the foundations, swallowing the town like roots that drink water. I can't stop it. If you're nearby, leave. Leave before the roads start pulsing, before the streetlights blink in rhythm. Don't follow the sound. Don't come looking for the mechanic. Don't come looking for me. Because if you get too close, I will feel your heartbeat in the dark, and I will take it, and it will make me stronger. This is the last warning I can give before the noise finishes erasing the part of me that's still human. Don't knock on that door. The end. Well, that was definitely interesting. It was definitely very different compared to a lot of the stories that we've read before. I think it kind of has the struggle built in of having a difficult time forming alliteration and imagery for things that we maybe have never experienced or never have imagined before. I know for me, it's much easier to imagine things when I can kind of base it off of other things, right? I mean, everyone can imagine a car. But if you try and describe a car to somebody who doesn't know what a car is, it's really difficult. That's my point. I think this dude was in an absolutely awful situation. First off, if my car stops working on the side of the road or whatever, and it's like leaking blood or something that looks like blood and it's just weird in there and I'm seeing it and it's just not right, I'm not going to the sketchy mechanic dude that can fix that. I'm, probably just going to get a new car. First off, that's the first smart decision you probably could have made there. Second, when, let's say you were to go to this mechanic shop and you start seeing this weird stuff, why are you following him into the third room? Why is it that when he's like, and I got another cool thing back here, you're just like, okay, bye, I guess I'm going in there. What? No self-preservation at all. No survival instincts at all in this person, for real. Now, it was smart to grab a weapon, for sure. I don't think it could have been anticipated that the machine in there was going to kind of whip out some tubes and stuff and try and cut him. But still, I think that, yeah, it is definitely a story that is so interesting. I think this is one of those things that once it's hit this critical mass at the end of the story, I don't know if there's anything anyone could do to stop it, especially if it just keeps getting bigger, right? It's like if there was a slime that was absorbing stuff and getting bigger. It would be deal with the bull if it was like the size of a penny. But once it hits the size of a skyscraper, what can you really do, So, with that being said, leave weird stuff alone. I think a lot of the Skinwalker stories, a lot of these stories that are kind of similar, are having a common theme that you can learn from. Don't play games if you're not willing to win the prizes. Don't go to the mechanic shop if you're not willing to be a part of the huge flesh machine. Okay? With that being said, thank you all for watching. I do appreciate it. Again, if you like the videos and you made it this far, please take a moment to consider subscribing. It means the world to me. And with that, I'm CC with the Crucible of Character. I love you all. Bye. And with that comes the end of our video. What would you have done differently if you were faced with these situations? Would you have done the same? Could you confidently say that you might have been able to make it out of these stories? Please let me know your thoughts down below. And again, if you enjoyed these videos and you'd like to see more just like them, please make sure to subscribe, and that way you don't miss them. As my channel doesn't have so many subscribers, the odds of you coming across this on the sidebar as you're watching a different video, or maybe even across the home screen, are low as is. But I just wanted to say I appreciate you all. And with that, I love you all.